Two mugs in a workshop.
Previously on Two Mugs in a Workshop. We took a huge gamble when we bought this BMW G310R off eBay. Untried, untested, with no recorded mileage.
So I've just dropped the bike off for the MOT.
The MOT test highlighted a few issues that need addressing. So in the last episode, we replaced the rear cush rubbers inside the rear wheel hub, replaced the rear sprocket, and cleaned and lubricated the chain. But now we need a plan moving forwards, otherwise this project's going to get way out of control. So I decided we need a snagging list.
And here it is. No, not really. Well, it is, but I think I went a little bit more professional.
Let's start with the mechanical issues. The cush drive we've already addressed, so I've highlighted it in green. Green equals done.
In terms of other mechanicals, the bike's pretty good, to be honest. The one thing though is there is some drag on the front brake. The rear's nice and free, but you can see there's a little bit of drag on that front brake disc. Now, we know the bike was standing around for a little while, so it could be that, but equally it could be a problem with the sticky caliper or the caliper pins.
Front brake is binding slightly. I've highlighted that in yellow because that's something that we'll be looking at when it goes to dealer. Next on the list, the cold start issue.
So I've just reconnected the battery because I've got a bit of a cold start issue going on with the bike. I'm not really sure how serious it is, to be honest, but with zero throttle applied when I apply the starter, see it starts and then it'll fail. Try again. And again. So you can see from the way it's idling, it's not particularly smooth. And sometimes it'll cut out when we apply just a touch of throttle, so okay this time. The other thing I touched on in a previous episode was the gearbox adaptations on the bike. Now, when I reprogrammed it, the bike needs to learn where each of the 6 gears are and calibrate that correctly. And the way it does that is effectively by riding it. So 10 seconds or so in each gear, working through the gearbox, should have adapted the gearbox. So we're going to plug on diagnostic. We're going to take a look both for any issues that might give us a clue as to where that cold start issue might be coming from. And at the same time, we're going to take a look and see whether the gearbox has adapted itself.
Result, absolutely nothing recorded, but of course that doesn't mean there isn't a mechanical fault going on somewhere. I did speak to main dealer. They've assured me that it's necessary to crack a little bit of throttle when starting the bike. So for now, I'm going to mark the cold start issue as resolved, but keep a very open mind. As we work through other issues, we may find that this has improved slightly. And the gearbox has fully adapted. I was fairly confident this was the case, as it's much easier to find neutral since the ride down to the MOT station. The oil and oil filter were changed before the bike was sold to me, but I'd like to get the BMW service history up to date, so we're going to main dealer. Oil and filter will be changed there. Spark plug, I'm told, doesn't need to be done until 12,000 miles. The dealer said absolutely no point in changing it. I've got an open mind on that one. I'm marking it as done for now, but I may change my mind later.
Okay, let's take a look at the air filter. I believe the bike was serviced before I received it, but I don't think that the air filter was included. I think Marc said he'd done the oil and filter change, and there's definitely signs of a new filter on there. No doubt he's done that. So just 2 clips, dead easy to get in here. Once you've got all the panelling off, Just clip it off. Airbox just drops off, as you can see, and exposes the air filter. First glance doesn't look too bad, but if we separate the filament, you can see there's a little bit of muck in there. And I actually did fire the bike up earlier on without the air filter in, and the cold start issue was a lot better. Now, I know dealers saying that you have to crack a bit of throttle on, and I've no doubt that's correct. And after 30 seconds or so, the issue becomes irrelevant anyway. But for the sake of £12, I think it is, for a genuine BMW air filter, I've ordered one. So that should be with us in a couple of days. We'll replace that.
The valve clearance check was done at 1,000 miles and doesn't need performing again until 12,000 miles. I've confirmed this with main dealer, and the way the bike's running at the moment, I feel that interfering would probably do more harm than good at this stage. If we need to, we can always come back to this.
I'm looking down into the fuel tank now, and you can see there's a little bit of grot, a little bit of rust in the bottom. Maybe not a huge amount, but it's definitely something to consider. And the other thing, of course, is we don't know how fresh the fuel is in this bike either, so that's another thing that we're going to look at. Somewhere under that fuel tank lives the fuel filter, and as we've got corrosion inside the tank, which I'm going to wash out, I'm going to take the chance to swap the fuel filter out as well. Just seems a logical thing to do, to be honest, and if the corrosion in the tank's really bad, I may even put a new tank on. Coolant level. What coolant level? There is none. There's a tiny drag in the bottom of the expansion tank there, but that's only because it's lower than the hose going into the top of the radiator. I don't know if it will show on camera, but peering into the radiator, there is coolant in there, and it is right at the top of the radiator. I'm not too concerned about that. I am going to drain it all out though and completely refill the system. Clutch cable. If we trace down the clutch cable itself, let's get the camera to focus. You can see there that the outer sheath is split. I've ordered a new cable from BMW. That doesn't sit right with me, so I'll get that swapped out.
That should do it for the mechanical items for now. Let's move on to the electricals.
Earlier in the series, I replaced the ECU, the DME, which is the engine management ECU, and it's actually held on by 3 bolts. Now, you can see here that you've got the bottom 2, but this top bolt up there, that was missing. So that's another little thing that I've ordered from BMW, and we'll replace it.
I won't make a video just to show a bolt being put in, so the next one was the corrected mileage on the bike. In the earlier episodes, I showed how we replaced the ECU and how we coded in and programmed the mileage to the instrument cluster, also known as the combi. So that's all done.
So I've got the battery off the BMW, as you can see, and I'm just going to run a quick battery test on it. Now, we've got a snap-on battery tester. It's a fairly basic chart system, but it does the job. So as I've got concerns about the battery and I have no idea where it came from, just simply a case of connecting onto the terminals and then following through the menus on the snap-on device. So I'm going to show you the best I can the snap-on device. So we're going to test the battery. You can see at the bottom here, there's an option for motorcycles and snowmobiles. Could be a future project, eh? Snowmobile. Click on that. And then there's a whole list of batteries. I've actually already got the battery selected. It's a YTX 9BS. And you can see it's come up saying it's a good battery, 13 volts, 178 cold crank. So I'll be honest, I never know whether to fully believe this battery tester, because it is a conductive tester, but it does tell you in general terms whether the battery is good or not. And I actually think this is a good battery. Now, I confirmed that by taking the battery around to a battery specialist around the corner, and they've tested the battery too, and here's what they found.
Simply put, even better result than our snap-on battery tester. It turns out, after a quick message to Marc, the seller, the battery was in fact a brand new battery that he replaced only weeks before selling the bike to me. So thanks to Marc.
One of the first things we noticed, I think, in the episode 1 was this wiring under the seat. This needs tidying up. We'll put some heat shrink tubing around there and make sure that these wires are soldered correctly. I've not bothered to investigate what's in there just yet. And you can see these yellow wires continue down the rear, and where they pass underneath the mudguard, they're actually exposed. They don't look too tidy there. So I'm going to make sure that they're all wrapped up against the weather and that they're off to the one side so that we can't see that. And I actually fancy, I'm not 100% sure yet because I've not checked on the part test log, but I've got a feeling that there's a small panel missing under here because there are some screws and brackets. So I suspect that there should be a panel that fits up there.
I have no idea if this is possible on the motorcycle, but think of coding as changing the default values, the parameters and the behaviours that BMW want you to experience. For example, it might be possible to display the BMW logo on the screen, or the G310R logo, or even a gear shift indicator. Who knows? But we'll have one episode where we'll take a look and we'll find out.
Other issues with the bike, primarily aesthetics. You know, how the bike looks, and I'll give you a little walk around of the bike. So I'm going to go and grab the camera. We'll walk around the bike and we'll just go through them one by one. If you spot anything else on the way, let me know in the comment section.
Here's the aesthetics snagging list. Bear with me on this one. I think some of these are going to take some time to achieve, and obviously will be dependent on parts arriving.
The general condition of the plastics isn't bad actually. There's the odd scratch, as you'd imagine. It's a 2017 bike and we're in 2024 now. But it was definitely dropped on the one side. It suffered some light damage. You can see a bit of amateur touching up there on that panel. There's a few scratches on the decals. There's more on this panel as we work our way along. The rest of it's not too bad at all. Few scratches, again mainly on the decals on these rear panels, so you can just see it looks a little bit tatty, doesn't it? Here's another example where someone's been a bit heavy-handed with a key or something around here and just damaged the plastic slightly. We can tidy all that up, that won't be a problem. I don't want it to look immaculate, I don't want it to look absolutely mint, but I think it could look a lot better than it does now. And without going around the other side's in similar condition. I also noticed that one or two of the fairings had some damage to where the bolts go through them. So I'm going to actually strip the bike back naked. I'm going to take all of these panels off. I'm going to see which bolts are missing, which panels damaged, reorder panels if I need them, and you know, make sure it's all correctly fitted. This fairing off the right hand side of the bike, as I suspected, there was a broken bolt on this one, and you can see down here we should have that clip in there. Somebody's over tightened it probably as it goes in. The good news is that the whole of the back panel bolts on separate, so the black piece I'm hoping is relatively inexpensive from BMW. I can just buy that broken piece and replace that. So not too worried at all. It actually bolts to these two brackets here up by the horn at the front of the bike. Everything else around there though, so far looking so good and quite nice and clean and tidy. This little panel which sits to the right hand side of the headlamp, you can see at the top there's a very small crack in that panel too. I put it on the floor. Okay, I've got that in focus now and you can see the crack in that panel. Panel's less than £10, so I'm going to buy a new panel from BMW. Here's the tank cover off the BMW, and as you can see it's in three pieces. You've got a plastic section down the middle which is unpainted, and you've got the painted sections either side. and conveniently they just unbolt down the centre. So first thing to do, take all the bolts out, and then we can split the tank into 3 separate pieces. Here's the tank cover panel. It's the centre part, runs down the middle. You can see the hole for the fuel tank cap, and it's made out of like a rubberized plastic. It's a bit faded, it's a bit scratched, and it's a bit scruffy, to be honest. So if I'm going to the effort of tidying the rest of the bike up, I'm certainly going to go to the effort of replacing that panel. Again, they're not expensive from dealer, so, and this one is in good condition. I'm sure I'll get some money for it, so I'll sell this one on eBay. As far as the bike looks, I actually quite like the look of these bikes. I think they're quite nice. One thing that really irritates me, though, that I just personally don't like, is those reflectors on the front forks. They're horrible and square and bulky. So I'm thinking of removing those and replacing them with an oval shaped gel type sticker that will go on there. It'll just look a bit more profiled. I'm also not particularly keen on the shape of these plastics on the mudguard. Too blocky looking. And I really don't think that the graphics, the decals on these bikes help out either. I think they just help to accentuate the fact that it all looks a bit sort of angular. So there might be something we can do there in terms of smoothing the lines out. But again, I'm going to keep that one to myself for a future episode. You can see that the 2 mirrors are a bit odd as well. I've already ordered a clamp for the other side, so you can see there's one large nut on the top there with a bit of thread exposed with the cover that slides over. Odd screw there, odd bolt there. And then coming over to the right hand side, we can see there's 2 nuts on the bottom of there which don't match the other one. Not drastic because it will be covered up. And this has been cross-threaded, the mirror. So I've got a new clamp here, a new bar clamp ready to go on. You can actually buy these mirrors on places like AliExpress, and they look exactly the same shape. I wouldn't be surprised if they're out the same factory. And they're only £8 for a pair. So worst case scenario, I might actually order a pair of brand new mirrors off AliExpress and replace them. The alternator casing. I don't know why all BMWs seem to suffer from corrosion down here. Happened on my old F650 CS as well. I believe it's quite common on them. But this has been touched up and it's been done in situ on the bike, because if you look carefully at the breather hose down here, there's paint on it. Paint on the hose itself isn't a big issue. If I could, I would like to change that alternator cover, but again, they are expensive. They are £70 plus the VAT from dealer. There's also a gasket that needs to be replaced at the back. It's easily going to be £100 by the time we've finished. So for this project, I think it's unlikely at the moment, but something that we could easily remedy later on. These covers on the frame, the silver area, is just bolted on. It does have the foot pegs attached though, and I personally think that would look a lot better if it were black. But in reality, changing the colour of the foot pegs might be a bit of a nightmare, to be honest. So I'm going to leave that alone for now. Going to do the aesthetic stuff on the bike, and that might be something that we come back to later on. Something else I'm going to investigate is whether any of the other colour schemes on the bike, that panel is black, and it might be possible for me to buy one that is already black in good condition, second hand. That front radiator section is quite exposed, so I've seen online there's some guards you can buy for these, and they're actually branded with the bike. Buy them on places like AliExpress, eBay. I think I'm going to get one. Might just be worth it. looking up underneath the rear of the tail of the bike, you can see there's a whole section missing there. And I was hoping that that was just a panel that was missing, but unfortunately the underside of the tail has actually been damaged or snapped off for some reason. So I investigated this with BMW. The new panel was over £40, which I thought was a bit too much. So I'm going to see if I can find one on eBay or somewhere similar, a second-hand part, and possibly replace that, because I think the BMW dealer will snag it when it goes in for dealer, and we're trying to get it away from dealer without any snags whatsoever.
That just about does it for all the snags. There's quite a few to work through. There's a few parts on order, and they'll form the next videos. Thank you so much for watching. Please remember to subscribe, like, and let us know in the comment section if there's anything that you'd like to see us do to this bike. Thanks again.